Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Into the Mind of Madness, the show where we talk a little bit about me and a little bit about the channel and a lot about Heroclix. It's been a bit of a calm week over here. Not much going on crazy as far as Heroclix is concerned. Been a little hectic trying to get things going on the show. Got some fun stuff to edit, and I am terrible at it, so bear with me as I slowly get myself together on that. Personally, diet's going well. Weighed myself in. I'm down to 250. That's back up from where I was before, but then down from where I started re-dieting at. So overall, in good spirits, and been thinking about this pauper format and the game in general. I've been thinking about a lot of games actually lately, just kind of filling my head full of stuff. Pending my acquirement of the Boldly Go Heroclix, kind of on a slow stint. Local store is just having some delivery issues. Growing pains of getting into the game, as it were. This kind of stuff happens when a store is slowly but surely introducing itself in Heroclix. All that said, we continue our travels through the world of the pauper format, as it is the format that is going to be used for the States events. Those of you who are keeping track, I will be updating the Everyman format shortly. I know some venues do use it, so I will be updating the document on our WordPress eventually, shortly. Maybe spend a little bit of time in an episode somewhere talking about that in brief. But last week, if I remember correctly, I may or may not, we've talked about Sentinels, we've talked about Avengers, we've talked about Onslaught, not in that order. Last week we spent a lot of time on Avengers. This week, I want to talk a little bit about the outliers in this format. Those really weird things, the exceptions to the rule, as it were. I'm not going to be talking about the WWE stuff yet. Not until I have that stuff in hand will I spend any sort of time on that. But I do want to talk about a few figures that kind of skirt around the rules, or the kind of the flavor of the format. And this is not an episode about whether or not I agree or disagree with their inclusion in the format. This is a discussion about their abilities in the format. And they are several figures that, though align with the rules of Prime, that was an accident, they do qualify for the format. Some of them aren't massively game-changing. Some of them have a bigger effect on the format than others. And we are, of course, talking about the Danger Room Uniques, which were released in X-Men animated series, and the Space Knight Uniques that were released in Avengers Infinity. I'm going to talk about those briefly, but I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time focusing in on the Danger Room guys, because they fall into another one of those keyword themed team archetypes that really kind of they make for an interesting possibility. All right, so let's go to HC Realms. All right, that worked. Beautiful. First time it worked. Okay, so our first figure, let's go chronologically. And I want to start with talking about Firefall. Firefall is, of course, the unique version of the character of the same name, as they are in the Avengers Infinity set. He is obviously, you just got to look at him to know that he is a range-focused figure. Now, these figures in particular, probably not going to make as big a difference in the format. Firefall here, he's traded with toughness, but he's also got invulnerability, but only when he's targeted by a range attack, which hopefully he's at, because look at the way this dial looks. His special attack, the Partner to the Living Flame, Energy Explosion, and Poison. When Firefall uses either power, damage dealt can't be reduced below 1. So kind of like the old school armor piercing, and it's basically penetrating poison. Let's not kid ourselves, right? Because this does actually get around invincible even. So it's better than penetrating poison. Special defense power. When Firefall is adjacent to one or more friendly characters with Space Knight keyword, modify defense +1. So if you're using Firefall, ideally, you're spending points for that ability. You're going to want to spend points on Javelin, his counterpart. Anyway, so Firefall, at first glance, it's probably going to fit into Armor or Cosmic Robot theme teams. You're not building a Space Knight theme team, or unless you are. I mean, crazier things have happened, and Javelin will fall under everything, has a Galadorian Phalanx special defense ability, and has a toughness and vulnerability at range as well. So if you're building the Space Knight team, you're building with basically Javelin, and Terminator. No, sorry, not Terminator. You're building with Firefall, Javelin, probably. I think, did those points work out? 70, 80, that's 150. 70, 75. So you're about 5 points short. You have 5 points to work with. No. Yes. You have about 5 points to work with in there. Anyway, where are we going with this? Obviously, you can't use 2 of the Type B Firefalls because the uniqueness rule. And Highlander rule because pauper. What else? And, when you get these guys all next to each other, they're +3 defense, so they're technically 20 defenses. It's not out of the question as a team, and it really doesn't matter. Oh, sorry, it's adjacent to one or more friendly, so they're all going to be 18 defense, which makes him even less interesting. So anybody who's about to tell me about that in the chat, scold me all you want. Anyway, so there's Firefall and Javelin. Probably not massively game-breaking in the format. Not as potent, per se. So, strength-wise, power level-wise, meh. There is the Venom Space Knight, if you want to do that too. Honestly, I don't think the team's cool, don't get me wrong, and the team is probably strong, but I don't, when it comes down to it, the addition of these isn't a massive overarching, oh my gosh, we should be worried about this and be fretting it. I honestly don't worry about them. But the next ones, of course, we have Magneto and Sabretooth. The most recently, the X-Men animated series set. And they were announced to be pauper legal. And I saw somebody get a Chase Prime set and was annoyed because they did come in that. But anyway, I'm supposed to ignore that part of my life. The Danger Room constructs have this trait, which, is the name I just said. When this character makes an attack, after resolutions, give them an arrow token for each one in the attack roll. Maximum 3 is what they can have. If they have 2 or less arrow tokens, characters take a maximum of 1 damage from their attacks. And Magneto takes a maximum of 1 damage from opponent's attacks. He can't be healed or chosen for Mastermind. Protected Pulse Wave. It's a 50-point character with this stat line. Now, a couple things to note is that you're probably not planning on doing all of the damage with Magneto on board. Your goal, usually in most cases with Magneto, or even with Sabretooth for that matter, is to use that point value they have and use them to call in guys and probably take a couple punches. Strategically, that's ideally the goal. If you are making attacks with them and you're collecting ones, your opponent is in for a scare when everything kind of triggers. So, all right. But where these guys kind of shine is not on the board, as a matter of fact. There are a number of things that make these guys super scary in format. Now, they do work with the Space Knights in the robot theme team, if that's the goal you want to go with. They're robots. They add to the theme. Generic theme is kind of a okay thing, as long as you find a way to bring yourself some probability control. And then working your way around that is a goal. But I do like the idea and this happens a lot in the sealed environment of the X-Men set, the X-Men animated set. The Sentinel-1 is a vehicle. And if Venom jumps in and starts driving a vehicle, the vehicle isn't limited by the error token situation. And that is an important element of vehicles that make these guys in the pauper format a little scary, because there are a number of uncommon vehicles. Sentinel-1 is just one of many. Now, some of them you'll chuckle at, but don't necessarily chuckle at them. The Dune Buggy is something. I mean, let's look at what we have. Let's look at Avengers Infinity, because we just said the Sentinel. We're gonna have to go to the forum post because that hasn't been updated on HC Rooms just yet. But we do go through here. Giant Girl's the first unique, neat. The shield flying car, not spectacular, but imagine these stats being turned into 12 damage, 4 attack with 8 range, which you can take off of the robot. In addition to which, you can give it its Psychic Blast, because you can use attack or damage powers, or 12 damage, 4 attack with range combat expert with 8 range. Like, what you're allowed to take from the driver of a vehicle is bonkers. Like I said, the Dune Buggy, probably, I don't know if the rule is still the same, but there used to be a rule about Battle Fury and vehicles, and it might not be a thing. And I'm going to just double check to see if I have a Sentinel-1 over there. Okay, I don't have the vehicle rules handy. I'm terribly misprepared. So I don't know if characters with Battle Fury still can't drive vehicles. There was a period where they couldn't. It might not exist anymore. Double check that. But even if the Dune Buggy has charge with a 10 movement, if you happen to want to use your Sabretooth to charge with 12 attack and 3 damage, why not, right? And that's a 30-point investment on a 6-click vehicle that turns into special terrain after the fact. Not a terrible investment. And that covers it for the vehicles from the Avengers Infinity set. We talked about Sentinel-1 but in brief, but let's just pull it up just in case you want to get a look at it. Upcoming rumor sets and rumors. We'll go back to this one here, so you can not see me click through it, even though you're just going to stare at my face trying to talk to you guys while I find my way through. It's one of these days I'm gonna rename this show to HC Realms, the show, because that's where we spend a lot of our time, isn't it? I should probably start coming up with a better way to show off teams. What do you guys think? All right, here we go. I went past it. All right, Sentinel-1. Back to the HC Realms. So Sentinel-1, and this is probably, if you're using Magneto, this is probably here the dial you want to use. It's only 6 clicks long, but it's 70 points. So for 120 points, you in fact get 12 attack, 4 damage, with either range combat expert or Psychic Blast. And that's a common driving an uncommon. I think that's a pretty okay thing on a 12 attack vehicle. In addition to which, there are some, Brotherhood's going to give him basically free sidestep at the beginning of the turn. And, the Juggernaut team's going to give him a little bit more speed with which to move. And yeah, he's got the running shot to go with the Psychic Blast if you decide that's the way you want to go. If it's Juggernaut, of course, I'm going to mention Juggernaut a lot because it's actually probably time to spend a little bit of discussion time about him. But Sentinel-1 is one direction you could go. It is to have the robot keyword 2. It is a direction you could go with a robot theme team, to say the least. I believe, let me just make sure I'm doing everything right here. It's all going. Okay, cool. So that's a direction we could go. Whoops. Hotkeys, Jason. Use your hotkeys. You made them for a reason. This is the shortest team to talk about. And when I say shortest, it's because the list It's very viable as a list, but there's not much on that list. And that is, yes, the solo Juggernaut. And it's good. It's strong. It is not unbeatable. It's just super potent and dangerous in the correct hands. It's got its downsides, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's take a look at it here. So, imagine you are or up against or somebody has brought a 300-point Juggernaut, and this is what we're looking at here. Okay? So, it is a 19 defense off the top. He is a giant. He is indomitable. And he's got a mega high stat line. His movement power can move through blocking and immediately after movement destroy all blocking terrain he moved through. And this character can move through squares adjacent to or occupied by opposing characters without stopping and automatically breaks away. Ignore characters for movement, even with characters with plasticity. My mutant brothers and sisters is his trait. Whenever an action token is removed from him, without actually clearing action tokens, so that is, I remove all my action tokens at the end of turn, he will heal a click. In addition to which, he's got Mass Destruction, which gives him super strength as a trait, and when Juggernaut is given a move action, after resolutions, destroy all adjacent pieces of blocking terrain, then he can use Quake at no cost. Now, that is super potent when you consider the fact that he's got Giant Reach, he's got a 12 movement, and single target Quakes do full damage. So imagine a 12 movement, single target, 13 attack, 5 damage Quake. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. Citywide Rampage is his next trait. If Juggernaut destroyed 3 or more pieces of blocking terrain during one of his actions, after resolutions, remove an action token from him. His special defense power, Colossal Stamina, Invincible. Juggernaut has Protected, Incapacitate, Mind Control, Outwit, Pulse Wave. So, if you're playing against Juggernaut, for the first 7 clicks, you are dinging your way through Invincible. What are the downsides? Okay, well, the upsides of this team are very obvious. It is a very fat dial, which is also very resilient and outwit and pulse wave proof, basically. Not basically, just flat out. And now on the plus side, it doesn't. He is kind of immune to Psychic Blast when you think about the fact that he's got Invincible, but there are ways of getting around that, to say the least. So, what are some of the problem things that Juggernaut has? Well, for one, he's not winning map roll, which means in your pauper map pool, please remember to bring a map that does not have any blocking terrain on it, or at least very limited amounts of blocking terrain. This is not a character you want to play against in the underground. That's a bad idea. This is a character you do want to fight in wide open, perhaps like a Muck Time or something like that. It is what it is. It's tough, but it is not unstoppable. It's just going to take a lot of use of resources and resource management. And, a lot of people, the big thing about Juggernaut is the universal off switch, Pulse Wave, doesn't work on him for the first little bit. It does in mid dial and it does in the late dial, but that if you're playing 300-point Juggernaut for 5 clicks, capital protected Pulse Wave. You have to do actual attacks on this guy, and he is going to use Invincible. And if he won map, he's going to heal 1 click at a time. So you got to make sure everything is manageable. In addition to which, do remember, because he has Invincible on those first 7 clicks, 8 clicks, he's at most taking 3 damage. So if you're at 5, if you can get a character up to 5 damage, don't go past that. Focus on getting their attack up with your perplexes or whatever, right? Anyway, so a character like this is something that Magneto is, while driving a Sentinel 1, is going to have a bit of a answer to. This is one of the characters you want to make sure Ranged Combat Expert is your choice, because Psychic Blast is not the ideal choice in this matter. What else you want to do? You want to make sure you are out-actioning, out-maneuvering, and forcing mistakes out of Juggernaut or forcing overreaches. It's easier said than done. If you can find artificial ways to add action tokens to him too, use them. Because even though he does have the colossal stamina, if you're in a wide open map and he's not able to get his into any blocking terrain, he's not gonna heal up from that colossal stamina. So if you force extra colossal staminas out of him, bonus. Just in general, Juggernaut's gonna be a tough nut to crack, and it's a long nut to crack. So brace yourself if you see it. It's not an easy fight. It's not an unwinnable fight, but it is a team that will be played in some of the more some competitive players. And don't get down on players. It's when it comes to states, people want to win, and if they want to bring a Juggernaut, it's a strong character. It's just not an automatic win, and it's not an automatic loss. You do have to work your way through it and understand both sides of it. You understand how to win with him, which is not necessarily just charging in and quaking at every single chance you get. It might even be like one shot a dude and run. It depends on how things work. Another thing worth noting is Juggernaut does have the Brotherhood of Mutants keyword. So prob any 10s or higher when you get the chance, because you want to limit as much of his healing as you can possibly do. I'm not going to outright say there's hard counters to him. There are ways of managing him, dealing with him, however you can figure it out. He doesn't automatically beat a lot of things, so it's tough. It's a tough nut to crack, but it's not an unwinnable matchup. There are going to be some teams that are going to have a very hard time with the Juggernaut, though. And that 13 attack is pretty reliable. Like, if you're one of those guys that's trying to use an 18 defend team, Juggernaut's gonna have a pretty reasonable attempt on you. I mean, it's not a bad thing. He's on 18 defense, he's gonna be 5 or higher. And a lot of those teams have ways of getting the defenses a little bit higher, but it is its thing. So, we discussed today the Magneto, and how it can be used, or the robot team, and how it can be used in vehicles, and I didn't discuss alternative ways, like the Magneto and the Sabretooth could be on board. I think I mentioned using ID cards, letting somebody else do the fighting, as it were. He's just kind of limited in the pauper format as far as the ID cards you want to use. So I almost feel like, that kind of thing. It's part of the don't die tech as well. There is a lot of characters in the lower rarities that have a hard time dying. Those two are part of that system, and sometimes you just can't get the kills on them unless you've got lots of attacks being thrown. There are teams that do throw a lot of attacks, so not necessarily a bad thing per se, but something to consider. Robots are viable. Juggernaut, very viable. Plan on seeing it even. Do not ignore his existence. Plan for him. Plan a strategy against him to best manage him. Juggernaut's one of the reasons a theme team goes a long way, even if it's just a not named theme, because +2, +3, where theme is I need a map or I need my probs in full-blown constructed. In this case, because there is such a viable one-man army in the pauper format, it is best to it is a one-man army that does excel in a certain map situation. So prepare yourself in that manner as well. If you are planning on using Orange Proteus, don't forget he has Smoke Cloud that you can use for free. So maybe use that. It could go a long way towards dropping Juggernaut's attack if you put it in the right places, so that Juggernaut is forced to lose some of his incredibly high attack value. All of these are things worth considering. That's about all we have for today. The pauper format is there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of viable teams, a lot of strong teams in the format that are worth looking at and worth preparing for. And we've talked about a few of the archetypes. We've got a few more weeks still until the form, or before state starts, and this series kind of comes to a close. But we're going to try to get a few more of them in the next 2 weeks. Is it 2? Hold on, let me do a quick count here. We have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 more of these before states basically officially starts. And we're going to try our best to make sure we cover as much as we possibly can. So thank you guys very much for watching. You guys have yourselves a wonderful evening. And thanks for joining me in a little bit of crazy. And thanks for stepping with me into the mind of madness. Get those practice games in. It'll help you a lot. Have a good night, everybody.